to the trees!
You've won through this gate, Butcher, but you won't get through the second. The inner gate to Silvermoon can only be opened with a special key, and it shall never be yours.
You waste your time, woman. You cannot outrun the inevitable.
You think that I'm running from you? Apparently, you've never fought elves before.
Damn that woman! We must find a way to cross the river. Speak, fool. Frostmourne.
Greetings, Death Knight.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to Let's Play Warcraft 3. So right away at the start of this mission, we have a little problem.
Tread lightly.
We have destroyed the Elf Gate in the previous
Our forces
mission.
cannot attack the flying beasts.
Fear not. The crypt fiends can force them to the ground.
But we no longer have a clear path to Silvermoon where the Sunwell lies. So we have to find some other way around.
What is it now?
Now, within the structure of this plot, this mission is kind of filler. It's not very eventful with respect to the story, but it's a super fun one nonetheless. Because this is where they ratchet things up a lot. And again, we're still getting new units to play with and new things to try out. So right away, we start with all these units. We start with 2 Necromancers, a bunch of Ghouls, and the newly introduced Crypt Fiends, plus Arthas himself. And also, we get something else new, a new neutral unit. Quoting South Park and Beavis and Butthead, as you do. Oh, and we also start with the meat wagon that I forgot about. Well, we'll ferry that one across the river momentarily as we head into this next outpost. There are 3 bases that we have to destroy in this mission. So we start with all this stuff to do it with, but no base. So we are haunting a gold mine, we're building a necropolis, and in the meantime, we really have no way to reinforce. So, for the time being, this is to be a slightly more careful push. I'm going to leave this off of autocast for the time being because this isn't the most terrifying force that we're going to be fighting against. We're going to keep the meat wagon on the tower and then we'll take out the production as per usual. The main thing is we want to come away with the Necromancers alive. And if we keep some of the Ghouls alive, that's a nice added perk. Again, this one's not going to be too hard, but we have nothing else to ferry across. And it's going to be a little bit before we can even start building unit-producing structures because we don't have any blight back at home. Not until the necropolis finishes, and we don't really have any excess gold. Actually, yeah. The haunted gold mine will produce a little bit of blight. The other problem that we're going to run into is that we do not have any ziggurats, so we couldn't build units even if we had a crypt up or a temple of the damned or a slaughterhouse or anything. So we've retained most of our units, most of the important ones anyway. We lost like 2 Ghouls, I think. We have the meat wagon alive. We have everything going for us. We're going to put a couple of ziggurats up here because from the north side of our base, we are going to be attacked all throughout this mission. I'll put the graveyard up and just need a little bit more for the crypt. Now you're seeing the Crypt Fiends kind of do their thing against all of these Dragon Riders. Namely, we're bringing them to the ground where our Ghouls can get at them. Or our Ghoul. We only have one of them left. Also, in the chaos, I lost one of the Necromancers, which is no good. I fucked up. Well, that's fine for this single outpost. This is where we are going to destroy our first altar out of the 3 that we need in order to build a key to get into Silvermoon. Back at home, we can finally get that extra acolyte in the graveyard. Throw down some more. And finally get this crypt up and running. Now the first couple of Ghouls that we produce are going to have to stay at home because we didn't leave anything behind to mine lumber. And we're actually going to need a fair bit of it for this mission, especially now that we have access to Crypt Fiends. Since Crypt Fiends cost, I believe, 40 lumber per. Forgot to send him back to the gold mine.
Summoning is complete.
Now, as for the Crypt Fiend, they are these dope Nerubian spiders. And you saw their key strength, that autocast web ability that specifically targets flying units to bring them to the ground. When I played this game regularly like a decade ago, if not a little bit more than that, I would do this super cheesy build, especially against orcs, where I would go Graveyard first and Crypt second, and then just rush straight into Crypt Fiends even before I had a Death Knight out. And I would go Altar later on and start hero production after I already had, like, I think the first 2 Crypt Fiends out.
Component of the key of the 3 moons. The other 2 crystals must be found if the Elf Gate is to be unlocked.
And boy, was this not a great strategy, but every now and then you would catch people off guard with it. It worked especially well against orcs. I would also sometimes use it in the mirror match. It's a little bit harder to make use of in the Night Elf matchup. It can go okay against humans, but mostly it's for orcs. Now we are going to ferry an Acolyte over here.
Tread lightly.
And that is because for the first time in this playthrough, we actually are going to benefit from expanding. We can only really do this one so fast. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with saying that here is where they are going to ramp things up a little bit. There is a much larger quantity of strong unit types and strong static defense that we are up against in this mission. So we can't rush too quickly through all of this. We just simply won't have the forces to do that. So we can stay busy around here, but for the most part, this is going to be slow-going expand. We're going to get our lumber and our gold going, especially at this second base. And I even need lumber to haunt that gold mine and to continue to produce Crypt Fiends. Like I was saying before, they're going to continuously send increasingly strong waves of enemies from the north of the base, or the northwest, which is why, there we go, you can get the Halls of the Dead going, that it is its own static defense. The 2 Spirit Towers that we made out of the Ziggurat should be enough for now. We'll send 1 Acolyte to repair this one over on the left, just in case. I think they may have just barely taken that one down, and we can't really afford to lose any food right now, especially with the cost of reproducing that.
What is it now?
And then the 1 Crypt Fiend we just made will help allay things back there. Now we really just have nothing to do but take it easy while we recoup the cost of expanding. The thing about expanding, and this is especially true in Warcraft 3, which is more focused on smaller armies and heavy micro, that is a big investment. And it's an investment that takes a while to pay off. So there is a timing right after you start an expansion where you are really, really vulnerable because you've spent all of this money that on something that isn't making you any money. And it's money that you haven't spent producing units or upgrades. So there is a large window, a timing window in which you are very vulnerable while starting an expansion. Once everything is up and running and stabilized, if you're on 2 bases against someone else's 1 base, you're in a really good position. You have a gigantic economy by comparison. But it takes time to ramp up. You have to haunt the gold mine, you have to produce the necropolis. Usually you'll want some kind of static defense there. You have to populate the expansion with workers, and that again feeds into the upkeep system in the game. And if you have too much of your supply in workers, that means you're getting taxed on all of the gold that you mine. So there is a risk, there's an inherent risk to expanding most of the time.
Our forces are under attack. What is it now?
In our case, there's not really that heavy a risk because we are just doing the campaign, but it's also a necessity. We're going to shift queue them all up to mine as soon as the gold mine is haunted, and ferry over just a couple of extra units so we can finally head through that waygate that's going to teleport us to the next base that we have to attack. Once we have our second base up and running and mining efficiently, we will really be able to produce like hell. We're even going to keep the 3 ghouls back there. That should be perfectly fine. Because they return 20 lumber per trip. Who? Okay. Why did you go through that waygate? I think we're good for this part of the army to go, but I do not know why that Zeppelin took that route. We are down 1 Zeppelin now. Oh well. Yeah, it's go time. So the Crypt Fiends are the equivalent, the tankier, more versatile cousins of the Riflemen. They have a bit more HP, they have the same amount of armor, and they have the same armor type. And they do the same damage, but at a lower rate of fire. So a little bit tankier, a little bit lower damage output. We're also going to throw this slaughterhouse up in a second crypt, because now that we have the expansion going, we are going to have so much income. Enough to be producing out of all 4 of those structures pretty much at the same time. There are going to be a couple of dry spells for a few of these. This should be fine, especially with this 1 Crypt Fiend here to help out, and more stuff on the way. So really, we're just going to be going for Necros, Ghouls, Crypt Fiends, and a couple of Meat Wagons, especially since we only have the 1, and that thing's more likely than not going to go down eventually. But mostly, we want to just make sure that we always have reinforcements for all of these bases that we have to take, because there is a lot of shit that we have to just roll over in this mission. And taking it slow earlier on is starting to pay off now, because our income has skyrocketed. So in the meantime, I want to talk about a little more about damage types and how different units interact with each other based on armor and damage types. Like I mentioned with the Crypt Fiends. Damage types come in the following flavors. There is normal, piercing. I am blanking super hard. Normal, piercing, siege, hero, chaos magic, and frost riptide rush. Yep. Am I missing one there? Normal, piercing, siege, chaos, magic, hero. Yeah. Armor types come in unarmored, light, medium, heavy, hero, and fortified. There is a gigantic table which explains which damage types are good or bad against which armor types. Like we already talked about siege damage a while ago, doing bonus damage to buildings. That's because buildings have the fortified armor type. So meat wagons, siege damage, buildings, fortified armor type. Therefore, siege wagons do extra damage to buildings. That's kind of how that interaction goes. Heroes do 100% damage against everything except for buildings, which only take half damage from hero attacks. Crypt Fiends specifically deal piercing damage, which means they do double damage to lightly armored units and 150% to unarmored, but reduce damage to pretty much everything else. Units with light armor or unarmored, by the way, are usually either flying units or casters. So that's another way in which Crypt Fiends do especially well against flying units. They not only bring them to the ground for the rest of your melee units to attack, they also, the Crypt Fiends themselves also just do a lot of damage to them. As for what type of armor the Crypt Fiends have, they have medium armor, which means they take reduced damage from piercing attacks, along with siege and magic, and they take extra damage from normal, which is what most basic melee units do. So your ghouls, your grunts, your footmen. And are we all good to go right through this? Yeah. Okay, I thought this was locked down a little bit tighter. So damage type and armor types are just enormous rock, paper, scissors battles with just a bunch of different elements thrown in. And it really influences the micro and how you prioritize targets. And by the way, chaos damage is really rare, and all it means is that a unit with chaos damage will do full damage to all armor types. It doesn't do extra damage to anything, but it also doesn't do reduced damage against anything. Oh, this captain needs to get away. Needs to chill out. There's also a whole table and an equation for calculating how much a single point of armor will mitigate, which is different from the armor type, and that's a whole can of worms unto itself, but let me just drop some links in the description for all this stuff, so you can, if you want, go more into detail with all of that. I don't think it's imperative to memorize every value, but having a general understanding of how this counters that, and how more armor is good and negative armor is bad for you, that's the important part. It's kind of like ooh, we need to get Arthas the fuck up out of there. I'm gonna send him way back and let him just regen with his unholy aura. It's like I was saying, kind of like frame data in fighting games. Maybe a little bit less important in the minutia, but it's something that that a lot of people feel they need to know, when in reality you just need to understand a more general level of it. Like in a fighting game, you don't need to know all of the plus and minuses. You just need to have an understanding that something is safe or unsafe on block or whatever. And then you can probably look into the frame data to determine a couple of things or come up with frame traps or stuff like that. But that goes into more intermediate and advanced tactics. That's not something that that everybody just needs to know. It isn't imperative information, especially when you're just starting out. Just having a basic understanding of how things go. Oh, we've had that dude idle for a minute, as we had with this acolyte. On his way back to the gold mine, he may as well build a few things. Needs to replace one of the spirit towers anyway. And where is that Zeppelin? So we're just gonna load up. And we can even, oh hey, Sylvanas is back. Arthas is mostly regen. We can even take out some of the Zeppelins that the enemy team has been using to ferry units over. Let's take him on a slightly roundabout path, bring the Dragonhawks down. Then we will ferry all these reinforcements over. What matters is that by the time we are done demolishing a base, we have a bunch of reinforcements ready. And we're producing out of 4 different buildings, so we will always have reinforcements ready by the time one battle is over, which lets us just keep steamrolling along. Oh shit! Now, if the Zeppelin blows up with all these units inside, all of them go with it. They do not just unload on the spot that the Zeppelin dies.
The restless dead wait. No one orders me around.
I mean, I feel like in Warcraft, drop play is way less common. But if you are, for instance, playing StarCraft, and you are having issues with people dropping you, or people dropping units in your mineral line or whatever, make sure you just have a couple of flying units or towers or some way to chase down whatever is dropping. Like have some way to chase down overlords or medevacs or whatever. preemptively. Especially at the edge of the map, people really like to skirt the edge of the map to get to your gold line. Like, they will take long paths to avoid just going straight down the middle of the map. Because that's the easiest route to intercept. So intercept them with some kind of anti-air flying unit in like a tree line or at the edge of the map or something. Shoot them down, take all the units that we're going to drop in your base with you. Such an easy way to get like a nice supply advantage too. Because that is a lot of money that they have to sink into the units that are going into that medevac or that overlord or whatever. Or that warp prism.
What does the shadow will?
And meanwhile, we have actually been getting further and further ahead. We have to bring Arthas up in just a second, and we aren't even floating that much gold or that many bits of lumber. We've actually been doing a pretty good job about that this mission.
What does the shadow will?
And this means that we only have one more of these moon crystals left.
Tread lightly.
Once we go ahead and bring Arthas up there, we still have plenty of stuff back here. We have our Zeppelin on death's door.
The second moon crystal is ours.
But hey, as long as it's alive, we will ferry with it.
At last.
Thing is hanging on. And Arthas, by the graces of Unholy Aura and that increased HP regeneration, is pretty much back up to full.
What does the shadow will?
Things are going pretty smoothly, and we have one base left, and then one extra objective after that to complete the mission. So we'll go straight through this. Ooh! Yeah, a couple people here to greet us, and these are always the nastiest parts of the bases in this mission.
At last.
Right at the mouth of the warp gates. Because they're gigantic choke points. And you can see units just teleporting back and forth automatically because they can't get far enough out. So you kind of have to click them forward instead of just clicking them in where they will kind of get bottlenecks. Really have to work to fan them out sometimes. Also, something else I should note, with the meat wagons and the necromancers here, and kind of producing both at the same time, is that there's a nice bit of synergy between necromancers and meat wagons. In that meat wagons will produce corpses for the necromancers to summon skeletons from. And it's really nice to get all those skeletons out preemptively going into a fight. Instead of having to wait for the kills to come flowing in before you can reinforce with skeletons. Kind of putting them on the front lines can be nice sometimes. And this base is just falling apart. With most of these bases gone, there's really not a whole lot they can do to threaten our base back home either. And of course, the one on the east side of the map has never really been in any danger whatsoever, so we haven't needed these spirit towers. I'm gonna make one now that I'm thinking about it, just because I'm paranoid, but I don't think they ever drop any of the other expansions. The only thing... No, the blue base is gone. Yeah, no, they have nothing left to drop over there. Plus, we're dealing with all the Zeppelins now. And we lost very little in this fight, which means as soon as we have this final moon key, we'll be ready to just march straight to the end. You can kind of tell what that is in the upper right, because it's the only thing that has been left unrevealed by the Fog of War so far. So let's go ahead and pick that up.
No one orders me around.
At last, the third moon crystal. The key of the 3 moons is complete.
This last part is really fun. And it's like it's like a harder version of these warp gate choke points. Because we're going to take everyone up to the upper right, but we'll notice something once we get a little bit closer. In fact, let's grab you guys. Meat wagons take up extra space because they're big units, big heavy units. take up 2 spaces instead of 1. We're gonna go ahead and just preemptively start getting that Zeppelin over here to the right. Because we are gonna need to make serious use of it. That thing has its work cut out for it. There is a tree line and another river bisecting the map. So this time we cannot take a warp gate over. We're gonna start off just pelting this tower with bodies so that we can safely get the Zeppelin over the river. And now the fun part begins. We are going to make so many trips in such a short span. This is a big old choke point where we can only deliver so many units to the ground at a time. But it's just like, oh, these drops are so fun in this mission. Oh, come on, we still gotta get those ghouls out. This is the best Uber driver? And give this Uber driver 5 stars. And you just overwhelm with drops at this point. Love this part of the mission. Oh, y'all don't really want to be attacking that. We don't really need to go dealing with any of these outer towers. We really just want to clear the units out, kind of steer clear of the sides, because they are just distractions, and get Arthas into the circle after we've dealt with all the problems. I'm not sure why nothing was autocasting at the Dragonhawk.
Speak, fool. Frostborn hungers. Ah, at last. Finally. The gates have been opened. Once we've dealt with Sylvanas, the inner kingdom shall be ours.
Damn you monsters. What will it take to drive you back?
The Ranger woman is starting to vex me greatly.
Alright, our path of destruction continues next time. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy. Have a good one.